The True Believer, Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movement by Eric Hoffer. Chapter 16, The Fanatics, Section 110. When the moment is ripe, only the fanatic can hatch a genuine mass movement. Without him, the disaffection engendered by militant men of words remains undirected and can vent itself only in pointless and easily suppressed disorders. Without him, the initiated reforms, even when drastic, leave the old way of life unchanged, and any change in government usually amounts to no more than a transfer of power from one set of men of action to another. Without him, there can perhaps be no new beginning. When the old order begins to fall apart, many of the vociferous men of words who prayed so long for the day are in a funk. The first glimpse of the face of anarchy frightens them out of their wits. They forget all they said about the poor simple folk and run for help to strong men of action, princes, generals, administrators, bankers, landowners, who know how to deal with the rabble and how to stem the tide of chaos. Not so the fanatic. Chaos is his element. When the old order begins to crack, he wades in with all his might and recklessness to blow the whole hated present to high heaven. He glories in the sight of a world coming to a sudden end. To hell with reforms. All that already exists is rubbish, and there's no sense in reforming rubbish. He justifies his will to anarchy with the plausible assertion that there can be no new beginning so long as the old clutters the landscape. He shoves aside the frightened men of words, if they are still around, though he continues to extol their doctrines and mouth their slogans. He alone knows the innermost craving of the masses in action, the craving for communion, for the mustering of the host, for the dissolution of cursed individuality in the majesty and grandeur of a mighty whole. Posterity is king, and woe to those inside and outside the movement who hug and hang on to the present. Section 111. Whence come the fanatics? Mostly from the ranks of the non-creative men of words. The most significant division between men of words and between those who can find fulfillment in creative work and those who cannot. The creative man of words, no matter how bitterly he may criticize and deride the existing order, is actually attached to the present. His passion is to reform and not to destroy. When the mass movement remains wholly in his keeping, he turns it into a mild affair. The reforms he initiates are of the surface, and life flows on without a sudden break. But such a development is possible only when the anarchic action of the masses does not come into play, either because the old order abdicates without a struggle, or because the man of words allies himself with strong men of action the moment chaos threatens to break loose. When the struggle with the old order is bitter and chaotic, and victory can be won only by the utmost unity and self-sacrifice, the creative man of words is usually shoved aside, and the management of affairs falls into the hands of the non-creative men of words, the eternal misfits and the fanatical contemners of the present. The man who wants to write a great book, paint a great picture, create an architectural masterpiece, become a great scientist, and knows that never in all eternity will he be able to realize this, his innermost desire, can find no peace in a stable social order, old or new. He sees his life as irrevocably spoiled, and the world perpetually out of joint. He feels at home only in a state of chaos. Even when he submits to or imposes an iron discipline, he is but submitting to or shaping the indispensable instrument for attaining a state of eternal flux, eternal becoming. Only when engaged in change does he have a sense of freedom and the feeling that he is growing and developing. It is because he can never be reconciled with his self that he fears finality and a fixed order of things. Marat, Robespierre, Lenin, Mussolini, and Hitler are outstanding examples of fanatics arising from the ranks of non-creative men of words. Peter Viereck points out that most of the Nazi bigwigs had artistic and literary ambitions which they could not realize. Hitler tried painting and architecture. Goebbels, drama, the novel, and poetry. Rosenberg, architecture and philosophy. Von Schirach, poetry. Funk, music. Stryker, painting. Almost all were failures, not only by the usual vulgar criterion of success, but by their own artistic criteria. Their artistic and literary ambitions were originally far deeper than political ambitions and were integral parts of their personalities. The creative man of words is ill at ease in the atmosphere of an active movement. He feels that its whirl and passion sap his creative energies. So long as he is conscious of the creative flow within him, he will not find fulfillment in leading millions and in winning victories. The result is that once the movement starts rolling, he either retires voluntarily or is pushed aside. Moreover, since the genuine man of words can never wholeheartedly and for long suppress his critical faculty, he is inevitably cast in the role of the heretic. Thus, unless the creative man of words stifles the newborn movement by allying himself with practical men of action, or unless he dies at the right moment, he is likely to end up either a shunned recluse, or in exile, or facing a firing squad. Section 112. The danger of the fanatic to the development of a movement is that he cannot settle down. Once victory has been won and the new order begins to crystallize, the fanatic becomes an element of strain and disruption. The taste for strong feeling drives him on to search for mysteries yet to be revealed and secret doors yet to be opened. He keeps groping for the extremes. Thus, on the morrow of victory, most mass movements find themselves in the grip of dissension. The ardor which yesterday found an outlet in a life-and-death struggle with external enemies now vents itself in violent disputes and clash of factions. Hatred has become a habit. With no more outside enemies to destroy, the fanatics make enemies of one another. Hitler, himself a fanatic, could diagnose with precision the state of mind of the fanatics who plotted against him within the ranks of the National Socialist Party. In his order to the newly appointed chief of the SA after the purge of Rome in 1934, he speaks of those who will not settle down. Quote, "Without realizing it, they have found in nihilism their ultimate confession of faith. Their unrest and disquietude can find satisfaction only in some conspiratorial activity of the mind, in perpetually plotting the disintegration of whatever the setup of the moment happens to be." End quote. As was often the case with Hitler, his accusations against antagonists inside and outside the Reich were a self-revelation. He too, particularly in his last days, found in nihilism his ultimate philosophy and valediction. If allowed to have his way, the fanatics may split a movement into schism and heresies, which threaten its existence. Even when the fanatics do not breed dissension, they can still wreck the movement by driving it to attempt the impossible. Only the entrance of a practical man of action can save the achievements of the movement.